Thanks, guys. Real quick. Last night when I got home, I tried to run a meeting with myself and play the video that I want you to watch. And I recorded the meeting just like I'm doing right now. And the sound didn't work. So I don't know if that's a copyright thing, because I did 3 minutes yesterday just testing it, see if it would work, and it worked. So I either did something wrong, didn't have the mic on or something. So I need a block of an hour to do it, which I just don't have blocks of hours until late at night. So I'll try that again tonight. Okay. And see if I can send that out. The video looks real good. It's clear and everything, but there's no sound. Yeah. So if not, I'll figure something out. Okay. It's just going to be helpful with your essay, which again isn't until late next week. Okay. So last thing I was talking about with the other classes was, the British asking the colonists to pay for a standing army, basically, in the New World. And they rejected this idea. Obviously, we had the Stamp Act Congress. And who wrote the Declaration of Rights and Grievances? John Adams. Okay. And when you look at that document, okay, it is similar, kind of maybe a rough draft of the Declaration of Independence. Okay. What the Declaration was, in many ways, was a list of grievances that we had with Britain. Okay. And so John Adams is going to be integral into getting everybody to sign on to the Declaration of Independence. And he will be on the committee to write it. Obviously, Jefferson writes it, but Franklin, Livingston, Sherman, and Adams will all play a role in that document. Okay. So as this takes place, okay, Parliament will repeal the Stamp Act. Okay. But they're going to add new things. Okay, they're trying to find ways to get money from the colonies. Okay, tariffs, these Townsend Acts would really limit who the colonists could trade with. It would limit, it would increase prices on goods from other countries besides Britain. So what we're seeing here is mercantilism being enforced on the colonies, plus the taxes. Okay, so the response there continues to grow, all right? And there was a group of men that we were going to call the Committees of Correspondence. Now, these are some of the leaders in New England, okay? In this group, you're going to find people like John Adams, his cousin Sam, Franklin, Thomas Paine, and even Alexander Hamilton. Okay. Now it's important to kind of remember with John Adams and Sam Adams. Okay, the cousins. Sam is older than John. Okay, by I believe about 13 years. Okay. John Adams is really, he has a relationship with the British. He wants to reconcile the differences between the British and the colonies. Okay. One of the famous quotes from John Adams is, "I am for the law." Okay. He's a lawyer. He believes in the law. And he thinks that we can work out our differences with Britain. Okay? Sam Adams is a little more radical. Okay? And he is going to turn very radical in 1770. Okay? When we get what's known as the Boston Massacre. Now, I think everybody, I don't know, can you picture in your head that painting of the Boston Massacre that's been found in pretty much every textbook, history book you've ever looked at? This picture? Remember this? Okay. Does anybody know who drew this painting? It's actually a lithograph. And so as a lithograph, it would be reproduced and sent out to all the colonies. So that people would know what happened in Boston. Okay, 5 people were killed as British soldiers opened fire into what essentially was a mob. Remember seeing that somewhere? Okay. Does anybody know who did that? Okay, his name was Paul Revere. Paul Revere drew the Boston Massacre lithograph. Okay. So you throw away the bad ones. This is propaganda. Okay. Now, here's a little American history trivia. Of the 5 people that were killed in the Boston Massacre, one of them was a runaway slave. Anybody know his name? Remember hearing about this?
I'm gonna know it when you say it.
Crispus Attucks. Okay, Crispus Attucks. Okay? Just that's your trivia, okay, for the day. Now there were like 9 other that were shot that didn't die. Okay. Now these men are going to be put on trial. These soldiers for murder. Okay, so they will be judged by a Boston jury. Who is going to represent these soldiers in their trial? They have the right to an attorney. John Adams. Okay, so John Adams is for the law. He's going to represent these men. Now, at the trial, we find out what really happened with the Boston Massacre. That, yes, they were throwing snowballs at the lobster backs, which is one of the terms they like to call the British soldiers, these redcoats, lobster backs. Okay, we are talking about New England. Okay, there's lots of lobster up there. They were throwing snowballs, but you guys know how we have gravel roads around here, or dirt roads, worse, right? When it rains, it gets really muddy on the dirt road, so we put gravel down, right? Well, in New England, in this time period, they would put down oyster shells. You know, people eat oysters, and then they use the shells for the streets, so when it rained, you didn't get stuck in the mud. And so those snowballs had oyster shells in them. Okay, and they were throwing clubs. These clubs are used to beat out rope. That they, you know, this is a Boston Harbor. Okay, you've got a lot of dock workers, and they carried these clubs with them to work. You know, and then they carried them to the point on King Street where they were giving these soldiers a hard time. Okay. Now, this was a mob action, and one of the soldiers got hit in the head with one of the clubs. It was thrown. His weapons discharged, and the others opened fire. They were under attack. John Adams gets the murder charges dismissed of these 5 British soldiers, okay, and their captain. Now, this is going to hurt John Adams' standing in the community with many, including his brother or his cousin Sam. Sam's very upset. A lot of Bostonians, they're mad at John Adams, okay, because they represented the Redcoats. So it's going to hurt his law practice. But he believes in the law. And guess what? A Boston jury just found 5 British soldiers not guilty. Okay? Justice was done. All right? Now, the propaganda, though, is being spread against the British. Okay? This increases tensions. All right? In 1773, Sam Adams and his crew. Now, this group right here, the Committees of Correspondence, will morph over time into the Sons of Liberty. Now, John Adams is not joining the Sons of Liberty. These are rabble-rousers. These are troublemakers in John Adams' eyes. Okay? With Sam Adams, and he's got a very close friend that is a new friend. His name's John Hancock. John Hancock is one of the wealthiest men in Boston. Hancock is a ship owner. He owns several ships. So he does a lot of trading. Now, with the enforcement of mercantilism, John Adams is known to the British to be somewhat of a smuggler of contraband, sneaking things into Boston that should be taxed, avoiding British tax collectors, and so forth. Guys, it was not uncommon during this time period that we are speaking, the early 1770s, to see tax collectors tarred and feathered. These Sons of Liberty are pretty radical. Now, I don't know if you remember learning about tar and feathering, but pouring hot tar over human skin can kill you. Okay? And then if you survive it, trying to peel off that tar as it hardens like wax. Ever had wax, hot wax on your skin? Hot black tar and then feathers on top of it. It's really brutal. Okay. Hancock and Sam Adams strike up this very interesting relationship. Because Sam Adams, you guys know what he does for a living? Well, he owns a tavern. Okay. Now, taverns are great, right? Okay, but this is kind of the Boston underworld. This is like, there's no electricity, right? So it's dark down there. You've got lamps, He's a little bit of shady character. So Hancock and Adams share a lot in common. Mostly their hatred of the British. Okay? So Hancock is going to be the money behind the Sons of Liberty. He's got the cash. Okay? Sam Adams is going to be the organizer, the community organizer, if you will. Okay? So in 1773, while these Sons of Liberty were down at the tavern drinking, obviously, probably railing against the British, like a political discussion, okay? Somebody comes up with the idea, right? Hey, we got to drink this British tea. We're not allowed to drink anybody else's tea. Let's just go down there and throw it all into the harbor. So over 300 caskets of tea, they dressed up as Mohawk Indians and threw that into the harbor. British did not respond well to this. Okay? And so in 1774, the Parliament passes what's called the Coercive Acts to coerce the colonists into behavior. Now, we have a different name for this. They call them coercive. We call them what? Intolerable. Now, this is where we're going to see a major crackdown. Okay? We're going to see basically the British Army occupying Boston. They will bring cannon off the boats. They will post soldiers on every street corner, and then they will start quartering their soldiers in people's homes. Which, if we go back to the English Petition of Right in 1628, everybody knows they have a right not to have soldiers quartered in their homes. Now, how do you think John Adams feels about this? He's not happy about it. Okay, so John Adams, that's for the law, is for the law. Okay, now after Adams got these soldiers off, the king knew who John Adams was. You know what I mean? He was in good with the British. In fact, they offered him a job. Man, being in, I think, the Attorney General job of Massachusetts. And then his cousin saying, no, John, join us. And the British is saying, join us. John Adams like, no, I'm not doing either. But now, the law, rights are being violated. Get this, as part of the Intolerable Acts, any British official charged with a capital crime, murder, would now be sent back to have a fair trial in Britain. So if you had a similar situation happen, instead of hiring a lawyer here, giving justice in this country, as John Adams got for them 3 years earlier, 4 years earlier, now those soldiers would be sent back to Britain for a trial. How do you think that makes John Adams feel? He believes in justice, and he felt like the Bostonians gave the soldiers justice and they could do it again. But now, that wouldn't happen. There will be illegal searches and seizures of people's ships, their homes, and so forth. So, guys, John Adams now on board with his cousin. All right? So now you're adding to that group somebody that's very fiery, okay, passionate about the law, and is seeking justice. Now, these men, Franklin included, okay, Sam Adams, Payne, they were going to call for a meeting, which, by the way, all assemblies have been outlawed under the Intolerable Acts. Okay? And what will become known as the First Continental Congress, 1774. So this is in response to the Intolerable Act. You've got 13 colonies. All of them will send delegates to what city? Where are they going to meet? Where? Not Pittsburgh. Where in Pennsylvania?
Philadelphia.
Thank you.
Oh. It's a P.
Do I know how to spell Philadelphia? No. Philadelphia.
Yeah, so it's like just Phila.
Phila. What?
Del.
Okay, put the city of brotherly love, right? Okay, Philadelphia. Now they're going to meet in a place called Carpenter's Hall. Which will later be renamed.
Is part of the reason I called them lobster box because at that time they're used lobsters as like a very lowly food, like they fed it to prisoners.
I don't know.
Yeah.
That, I mean,
No,
have you heard that?
compared to
I
all
hadn't
the
heard that.
smells.
That doesn't mean what you're saying is not true. You know what I mean? I haven't heard that. But that's interesting. Man, that's like my favorite food in the world.
Lobster?
Yeah.
It's so good. Mine's mac and cheese. It became a delicacy when the railroads were being made because then it could be shipped from the coast to the side. So the prices
Yeah, people have
went-
never had it before.
Yeah, so the prices went up, so the lobster became a delicacy when the railroads were.
Ah, cool.
Why?
Hey, we got some food history going on in here. What's that? It is. Now it's cheaper the closer you get to the shore. But with the type of shipping we have today, I know I like the little lobsters too, the crawfish, crawdaddies, red bugs, mud bugs, Louisiana. Any guys ever had a crawfish boil? Yeah. Yeah. They're little lobsters. Okay. In Louisiana, instead of doing barbecue, they do crawfish boils. They're good. You just eat the tail. Just the tail. Yeah.
And the claws are too small to really get any meat out of the claws like you can with lobster. But
Anyhow, food history. What's Carpenter Hall's going to be changed to? The name? Independence Hall.
I said it.
Say it loud. Confidence. Okay. So, actually, Georgia is not going to send any delegates. So, 12 of the 13 will send delegates here. Okay. And not really much is accomplished here. They do send the king something called the Declaration of Resolves. Okay. And they agree to meet again, if necessary, the following year. Okay. Now, John Adams, Sam Adams, John Hancock, and Thomas Paine are the 4 representatives of Massachusetts. Okay. Now, from other colonies, you've got some very famous people as well, like especially from Virginia, Richard Henry Lee of the Lee family. You've got Thomas Jefferson shows up at this thing. Ben Franklin is there from Pennsylvania. All right. So they meet. Now, John is very frustrated because what's about to go down? Okay. He doesn't like all the talk. Adams wants action. Okay. And action is about to happen in 1775. Okay. We're kicking some butt. All right. So, April 19th, 1775. Now, Sam Adams and Hancock have been stockpiling weapons, guns, and powder. They've been stockpiling these weapons in Lexington and Concord, outside of Boston. Okay. The British, under General Gates, are going to seek to seize those weapons. Now, these guys, the heads of the Sons of Liberty. The British want them for treason. So on that fateful day, of April 19th, the British sent troops out to Lexington and Concord to seize their guns and powder. And they were searching for these two men. On the way out to Lexington and Concord, they never got there because they were met on the road. By who? There's a story in your book about Paul Revere. You need to read it. Okay. Okay.
The British are coming, the British are coming.
That's what I was looking for.
Oh.
They called them the Minutemen. Okay. Or the militia. Now guys, listen. I don't know if I've already said this in here or not. I know it in my regular classes. Every colony that you lived in, if you were a male, at the age of about 15, every male, except in the colony of Pennsylvania, they had the Quakers, okay, pacifists, you had to join the militia. It was compulsory. Compulsory. Yes, you had to join the militia. Okay, you had to own a gun. You didn't have a choice. You had to. Okay, why? Because all those years from 1607 all the way until the 1770s, these colonists were dealing with Native American tribes that were hostile towards them. They had to be able to protect the neighborhood. And then you had like the French and Indian War, Queen Anne's War, King George's War. And I remember the last one, King William's War. Okay? So these people had to know how to fire the weapons and fight. But they had also been fighting against the Native Americans that didn't follow the European rules of warfare. The European rules of warfare are called linear tactics. There is honor in fighting. And there's an honorable way to fight. And that is to meet your enemy on an open field, face to face. We'll have 3 columns of soldiers. This one will be on their knee. They will fire. These people replace, fire, replace. Same thing on the other side, shooting at each other. And the first team to withdraw from the field loses. This is how Europeans fought wars for centuries. Now the Americans, they know better. They've been fighting against Native Americans. And the Native Americans fight a different type of warfare, which is referred to as guerrilla warfare. There's no dishonor in avoiding a bullet by hiding behind a tree. Or is there? I don't care if there's dishonor or not. I don't want to be shot. So, as the British in their bright red uniforms are marching out to Lexington and Concord, the militia, which includes young men, ages of 13 and above, farmers, blacksmiths, shopkeepers, lawyers, doctors, hear the call. And they spring out and drive the British back to Boston. There are many killed on both sides. Okay? As John Adams said, Boston, Massachusetts blood has been spilled. Massachusetts is my country. We need to do something. Okay? This fighting took place within a few miles of John Adams' farm outside of Boston. Okay? So he actually witnessed the aftermath of the bodies on the ground. Okay? Of both colonial and British. Okay? So, with here, they're going to need to meet again. Okay? and we're going to get the Second Continental Congress. Where are they going to meet? Philadelphia. Got it. Now, guys, it takes like 3 weeks. I think it was like 3 weeks. I don't know if it's 3 weeks. At least a couple of weeks to get on a horse and ride to Philadelphia from Boston. You know what I mean? All these people are coming by horse from the different colonies. So the Second Continental Congress meet in response to Lexington and Concord. Okay. Now at this point, the guy in charge of the Second Continental Congress, the president, is going to be John Hancock. A radical son of liberty is going to be the president of the Second Continental Congress. John Adams is freaking fired up. Okay, now nobody's talking about independence out loud. Okay, it's not something that's mentioned on street corners and so forth yet. Okay, now this starts in, I think it's May. Yeah, May 1775. Okay, and this Second Continental Congress will last until March 1781. Now we know what they're going to do in July of 76, right? Okay, so the arguments that take place between May and July, okay, of 75, 76 are key to understanding, you know, how you're going to get. Now, originally they needed 9 of 13 colonies to declare independence. Okay. These are the best, you know, they're sending some of the best men of their colonies here. Okay. And they're very proud men. They all believe in their own colony, their own country. And they don't want to be swayed by John Adams, this Bostonian. That's a loudmouth. That's obnoxious and disliked. John Adams. Okay? He's going to wear on people. Franklin will have to calm him down. John Adams, sorry. Yeah. Now, during this debate over independence, it's actually going to be Hancock that says, you know what? Because they're trying to get 9. So Adams is talking to South Carolina. He's talking to Pennsylvania. He's talking to New York. You know, he's trying to get 9. But Hancock, watching over this proceeding, is like, you know, if we get 9 to declare independence, our country is going to start out a house divided. We will have 4 of our brothers that will not go to war with us. And Hancock proposes a resolution that you need all 13. And Adams is like, you got to be kidding me. How am I going to get all 13? Okay. Well, you got to get Virginia. If you get Virginia, okay. So back in Virginia, at their legislature in the colony, there's this guy named Patrick Henry. He's not at the Continental Congress. He's back in Virginia trying to convince the Virginia legislature to vote for independence, to send instructions to vote for independence. And that's where Patrick Henry gives this amazing speech, which is often well quoted. Yes, give me liberty or give me death. Virginia sends instructions to Lee, Jefferson, and Washington, who are the delegates from Virginia, to vote yes for independence. Now, when Jefferson wrote it, okay, there was a committee for the Declaration. Okay, there were 5 men on the committee: Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, Ben Franklin, Livingston, and Sherman. Adams convinces Jefferson to write it. Jefferson writes it. Then you got all the other men in the room that are going to want to critique it. So the original Declaration that Jefferson wrote was butchered, like your favorite English teacher would butcher a paper. Okay? They would have arguments because Jefferson, a slave owner, put some phrases in there about slavery and ending the institution of it, that it needed to be ended. South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, Virginia, they don't like this. So in your book, there are some deleted passages from the original Declaration of Independence. Okay? They're going to argue over the language. They're going to argue over the content. And once that arguing is done, Jefferson will redraft the Constitution or the Declaration. And on July 2nd, it's ready to be signed. Okay? From what I understand, there was only one man in the room that would not sign it. They were all committing treason. His name was John Dickinson from Pennsylvania. He was a Quaker. So he was asked to leave the room and not come back if he would not put his name on it. Franklin said it. He said, "We must all hang together, or we most assuredly will hang separately." Because they were all wanted for treason when they put their name on that document. Now, many of these men, these are their lives. Many of them are wealthy. Okay, so they're putting basically their wealth, their comfort, their lives on the line here. Many of them will have their homes burned to the ground, their children captured by the British. Because they know who signed that thing, because they sent it to England. This Second Continental Congress is the only thing holding these 13 colonies together, and once they declare their independence, they are really 13 countries. The only thing holding these 13 countries together is the Second Continental Congress in Philadelphia. Now, there are times during these years, these 6 years, where they will go home. They have to. They can't stay in Philadelphia. In fact, there are times when the British Army gets really close to Philadelphia and they have to run for their lives. In 1781, they're going to write the first Constitution, the Articles of Confederation. Okay? We're not going to get into that. Okay? We're not getting into the Constitution yet. Okay? This really ends with the signing of the Declaration. Okay? Now, they need a commander-in-chief. They need an army. Now, all those men in that room, every day, there's one guy that showed up every day in his military uniform. Who was it? George Washington. He was 6'4", when the average man in America was about 5'8". He stood out. Okay. Now, does he have a sterling military record, Mr. Washington? No, he doesn't. But he wants the job. Hancock wants the job of commander-in-chief, too. They're going to give it to Washington. They're going to create a continental army. Okay? We got a 25? Okay.
Why did they give it to George Washington, not him?
Washington served with the British for years. Served in battle with them, knew the generals, knew their tendencies. So he's probably the more logical choice. And it proves to be a very good one. Okay. Now, I love teaching the American Revolution. This is not a history class on the American Revolution. But I do have tomorrow to talk about the test. Okay. And what's in your book. Okay. Now, there is a little write-up on the video I want you to watch. Okay. But there's a thing about the myth of the Midnight Messenger. You've got Patrick Henry's speech before the Virginia Convention. You've got Thomas Paine's Common Sense, which sold over 150,000 copies. Okay. Thomas Paine's The American Crisis, which is actually after the signing. And then the Declaration itself. Then you've got deleted clauses, Jefferson and slavery. Okay, and those are some things that you're going to want to add into your essay. Yes.
So the objective test is over all the way up to the end of like the 5 basic concepts of democracy.
Yes.
And then the essay goes all the way up until the class today.
Yes. Did you draw a line in the notes? Okay. Yeah, 5 basic concepts of democracy was the last thing we did in that part. Yes. And then you've got Locke and Hobbes in there too. Don't forget Locke and Hobbes. There's a medium answer on that. Okay. So that you'll have some writing your first test day, not a ton. And then the second test day will be all writing. So tomorrow I'm going to talk. I love teaching the American Revolution. I'm just going to give you a little bit. You don't have to include it, but I want you to remember it for posterity's sake. It's the founding of our country. Okay. Then I'll talk about the test. Okay. So tune in on that tomorrow. This had never been done before, guys. No country had ever been just like started from scratch like this. Okay? So it's a pretty amazing story. Have a good day.